Welcome back. In the last video, we learned the importance of having a separate audio host, and we signed up for a Castos account. In that video, we learned that Castos has its own WordPress plugin called Seriously Simple Podcasting. In this video, we're going to install and configure that. Let's get started. First, it's important to note that plugins are a way for us to add functionality to a WordPress site beyond what comes out of the box. So if we want to turn WordPress into a forum, we can get a plugin called bbPress. If we want to turn WordPress into a learning management system, we can get a plugin called LearnDash. Because we want to turn our WordPress site into a podcast website, we need a plugin that adds functionality required for podcasting. In order to get Seriously Simple Podcasting, you click on Plugins and then go to Add New. Much like searching for a theme, you can then go to the Search Plugins box and search for Seriously Simple Podcasting. The page will automatically refresh, and the first option there is Seriously Simple Podcasting by Castos. Go ahead and click Install Now, and then Activate. Once you activate Seriously Simple Podcasting, you'll see a new entry under Posts called Podcast. You can also access the settings page for Seriously Simple Podcasting by clicking on the settings link under its plugin entry. Once we do that, we'll see a video that we can dismiss, and then we're brought to the settings page. Now, there are a lot of options here that we're going to go through, but the first thing we need to do is link our hosting to our WordPress site. We can do that by clicking on the Hosting tab. We'll then be asked for the email address we used to register with Castos and our API key, which we can get from the Castos website. If you'll remember from your Castos account, you can click on your name and go to My Account, then go to Podcast Settings, and copy the API key. Then you can go back to your WordPress site and paste the API key there. Then click Validate Credentials. Castos is making sure that we actually do have a hosting account, and we can click Save Settings. Now our Castos account is linked to our WordPress site. With our hosting account validated, let's go back to the General tab. There are a couple of things that we need to point out. First of all, Seriously Simple Podcasting creates a new type of content for us called podcast episodes. So we're actually going to skip the podcast post types area. We can also choose to include our podcast in the main blog, which we're going to do because, again, we want to make the process for finding our episodes as easy as possible, and we're not making any customizations to the homepage. So by checking this, it'll include our episodes with blog posts right on the homepage. Next, we'll choose to place the media player everywhere we can. That's full content, excerpt, and OEmbed excerpts, which is a special type of excerpt within WordPress. This will ensure that anytime an episode is displayed, our media player will be displayed with it. We're going to keep the media player position and visibility the same, above the content and accessible to everyone. Seriously Simple Podcasting does make it easy for us to create podcasts only for logged in users, which is good to know if you want to have a private podcast. We're also going to turn on the iTunes iOS 11 specific fields for each episode. Basically, this includes specific information about each episode so that iTunes can better categorize and organize our podcast. We'll keep the player metadata turned on, and we will use the HTML5 player with album art. This allows us to make specific color customizations. One thing that we can do is choose the same purple that we've been using throughout the site. So we'll click Save Settings on this. We're going to skip over feed details. The next video will go over exactly what an RSS feed is and why it's so important to our podcast, and we can configure that then. Under the security tab, again, you'll find more information for making sure that our podcast feed remains private. So it'll block feed readers like iTunes from accessing the feed. So again, if you have a podcast only for members or students or something like that, Seriously Simple Podcasting makes it very easy to hang on to that. Redirection is used if you want to change your feed, which we don't need to do. Publishing, the important thing here is the complete feed. We will need to know the complete feed URL when we're ready to submit our podcast to the various directories. We've already looked at the hosting tab. Under import, if you are using another service besides Castos, you can import the files using this page. And if you need more functionality, Castos and Seriously Simple Podcasting have plugins or extensions for you to use here. So for example, if you have multiple speakers, there is an extension to allow you to list multiple speakers for your podcast. So those are the settings for Seriously Simple Podcasting. The last thing I want to point out is how Seriously Simple Podcasting organizes episodes. And that's in two ways. There are tags, so we can assign keywords to each episode. If you are talking about WordPress in one episode and Star Wars in another, you can have tags to do that. Seriously Simple Podcasting also has something called a series. So if you want to host multiple podcasts on the same website, you can do that here. For example, if you have a public and a private feed, you can create the public series and the private series, and those two podcast feeds will remain separate. So that's it for this video. In it, we got a rundown of how Seriously Simple Podcasting works after we installed it. In the next video, we're going to talk specifically about our feed.